sold them to fund his travels, because, unlike Darwin, he was not lucky enough to have inherited wealth. He was a regular correspondent with Darwin, and had published scientific papers on the species problem, one of which appeared in print in 1855, and prompted Darwin to mention in a letter to Wallace that, "I can plainly see that we have thought much alike." When Darwin realized just how much alike, his instinct was not to ward off his rival, but to let Wallace publish and take all the credit. As we describe in Chapter 6, it was Darwin's friends who had the inspired idea of putting together a joint scientific paper under both their names, to present the idea of natural selection to the world at large and ensure that credit was shared. By 1859, evolution by natural selection was an idea whose time had come. And if neither Darwin nor Wallace had come up with it, somebody else very soon would have. Perhaps Wallace's friend Henry Bates, who also features in our story. But how did that situation come about? And why is it that the origin story celebrates Darwin, not Wallace? That is what this book is all about. Introduction. Evolution is a fact. It is observed to happen in nature, most famously among the finches of the Galapagos Islands studied by Charles Darwin, in the fossil record of life on Earth, and in the way superbugs evolve resistance to antibiotics. Theories are put forward to explain this fact, in the same way that Isaac Newton and Albert Einstein put forward theories of gravity to explain the fact that things fall down and the planets are held in orbit around the Sun. The best theory of gravity we have is Einstein's general theory of relativity, in the sense that it does a good job of explaining the observed facts, although Newton's theory is pretty good for many purposes. The best theory of evolution we have, in the sense that it does a good job of explaining the observed facts, is the theory of natural selection, although possibly it may not be the last word on the subject, just as Newton's theory of gravity was not the last word on that subject. But apples did not stop falling off trees when Einstein improved on Newton's theory, and living things will not stop evolving if someone improves on Darwin's theory, which, spoiler alert, has indeed happened. So this book is not really about the origin of evolution, but about the origin of ideas about evolution, which would not have made such a snappy title. As this implies, the theory of evolution by natural selection did not spring fully formed and unprecedented from the brain of Charles Darwin. The idea of evolution had been around in various guises since the time of ancient Greece, and even natural selection, the key to Darwinian evolution, had been half seen, as if through a glass darkly, by some of his predecessors and contemporaries, while one of those contemporaries, Alfred Russel Wallace, saw it as clearly as Darwin did. Nor did theorizing about evolution stop with what Daniel Dennett called Darwin's dangerous idea. Our aim is to put that idea in its proper context, showing how it built on what went before and how it was further developed in the 20th century through an understanding of genetics and the biochemical basis of evolution into the so-called modern synthesis and beyond. None of this diminishes the achievement of Darwin himself in perceiving the way evolution works at the level of individuals and species. The idea is obvious once it's been explained. As Thomas Henry Huxley, Darwin's bulldog, commented when he first learned of the theory, how extremely stupid not to have thought of that. But, as is well known, hindsight has 20/20 vision, and it required great insight to be one of the first to think of that. Darwin's other great contribution, unlike, for example, Wallace, was to present the idea in a clear and accessible book that lesser mortals could understand. He deserves his recognition as the primary proponent of the idea of natural selection, but, as we hope to show, his contribution was one link in a chain that extends back into antiquity and is still being forged today. Our story is incomplete, in the sense that we have not tried to describe the work of everyone who is on record as having thought about evolution, but by highlighting the main players, we hope to provide an overview of how the story developed before and after Darwin. John Gribbin and Mary Gribbin, April 2019. Part 1. Ancient Times. Chapter 1. Through a Glass Darkly. In 19th century Europe, the idea of evolution was revolutionary because it overturned the established Christian tradition of an essentially unchanging world in which everything, including the forms of living things, had been fixed by God. This tradition actually predated Christianity. In ancient Greece, Plato